right, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio. I just heard the tail end of the music. We're having some technical issues there. Gary, are you on with me right now?
Yeah, I am. But
okay, I just sent you a different link for Matt, a different Skype account. So go ahead and contact request him, and we'll add him that way. I have two different Skype connections for him.
Okay.
And I think we have the wrong one. Do you see that in your inbox there?
Yep. He has not accepted my my contact request yet. Needless to say, you're live. I think you're all alone for right now.
That's all right. Well, he will. Go ahead, and I'm going to send him another message right now. Request from Gary. All right, we'll get it. We'll get this set up now. And I apologize, everybody, for the delay here. Again, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath. We're going to be joined by Matt Weidner of Weidner Law in just a few minutes to talk about. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of things he wants to talk about, especially today with the drama that played out on gun control. I'm sure he's going to have something to say on it, but I know he's probably going to want to talk for sure about what's going on with these too big to fail institutions that managed to cut themselves a nice fat deal to get out of any more further liability with the foreclosure gate. Like I said, when Greg was on, I'm working on a video now because I want to talk about Gary. You're having issues here still.
Yeah, I'm. Believe me, I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Okay, I see things happening here, and I don't want to steal any of Matt's thunder on these topics. But so what I want to talk about is the show that was put on for us all, the theater that happened in D.C. today with this signing or with this plea to the American people for gun control. You know, as as Greg pointed out, every one of those kids that was standing behind the president today, they're carrying, for any of them even enter middle school, in most cases those kids were that young, are carrying around $52,000 in debt. You know, the president is using, and I shouldn't just say the president, the powers that be, the status quo, the people that are implementing this agenda are going to use any method necessary, even if it's tugging on our heartstrings, playing on our heartstrings, in order to get agenda passed that they want. Why on earth? Why on earth? If you've read, and I'll put this link in the chat so you can see every single one of them. If you have read the executive orders signed, it leaves you scratching your head. You know, why on earth are we going to start using part of the Obamacare Act in order to further the cause of gun control? You know, it comes down to a real simple fact. Everything is going to be, everything's illegal. Everything is potentially going to end you up on one kind of a list or another. Now, I know that might sound far-fetched, but think about it. From the Patriot Act from 9/11, we have 1 million plus people who are sitting on a no-fly list. Over 1 million people sitting on a no-fly list. Don't know how you get on it. Certainly don't know how you get off of it. Now we find out that there's another list coming to the foreground that is not necessarily a no-fly list, but is a concerned individual list, or a guest list of people that potentially could be a dangerous threat. So when we have the president come out today signing 23 executive orders, and several of them have to do with the healthcare industry, basically telling them, sending a memorandum out that these folks not necessarily must report, but it's certainly setting the tone for spying on the people of this country. You know, again, you're more likely to be hit by a bolt of lightning than you are to be involved in a mass shooting. Now we're going to recruit the medical profession in order to ask questions on, do you have a gun in your home? What are the parameters of this? If it's somebody that is going through a divorce, and they happen to go in because they're dwelling on this topic, and they're speaking to a healthcare professional, a general practitioner, and he says, "Hey, listen, I'm dwelling on this, and I'm having a lot of anxiety over this. Is this going to end up this individual on some kind of a list so he can't exercise his rights under the Second Amendment?" Absolutely. I mean, we are going to compile more and more lists of people to the point that everybody is on a list. Everybody's living in an East German police-style Stasi state where the biggest employer of the populace is the spying on the populace. This is the trajectory we are heading on. Again, this is crystal clear right before our eyes. There's a reason why multi-billion-dollar fusion centers are being built. There's a reason why the billions of rounds of ammunition, the security state, is being built out. And it most certainly isn't for the reasons at least my opinion is, it isn't for the reasons that are being given to us. Gary, is that you? Matt, is that you? I mean, I'm getting all kinds of signals in my headset here.
Well, you're still on your own, Charlie, and I'd come in and help you out, but I'm a little occupied punching buttons here.
It's not a problem.
One thing that might that follows on what you were saying. Years and years ago, I had kids in grade school and high school, and of course that's been some years. But even back then, and we're talking a long time ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago, my kids came home saying that they were quizzed at school whether mommy and daddy had guns at home. And oops. Well, it appears at this point like I'm on my own. I think I just lost Charlie McGrath. I do believe. Yes, I think I did. Interesting. Well, good evening. Sometimes you do the best you can. And, the technology just does not want to cooperate. And tonight seems to be one of those nights. And of course I was not prepared to come on screen. So there. Now, system crashed. Okay, I just got a note from Charlie. He tells me his system has crashed. So I guess, hey, tonight is Gary's show. Welcome to Wide Awake News with Gary Hendershot as your host. I wasn't quite satisfied with what Charlie was discussing tonight, so I just, pushed him aside. If you will stand by for just a moment, though, I think Charlie's got his issue squared away. And boy, I tell you, if Brett was on the ball, he'd already be taking me to commercial about now, so I wouldn't have to tread water. But if you'll stand by for just a moment, I'm going to try to bring Charlie back to life here.
Good grief. Gary, am I on with you?
Yeah.
Man, when it rains, it pours. There's no doubt about that.
And I'll tell you what, you're back just in time to take us out for the break.
We're going to fix our issue. My system's crashed. Gary's crashed in the break. We're going to try to get a hold of Matt. We're going to be back for Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I am Charlie McGrath. It is, hopefully, we've got our technical issues worked out. We have Matt Weidner, Weidner Law, on the program tonight, and I'm going to jump right to it because we burned through that last segment, and I got all kinds of questions I want to ask Matt about the new foreclosure deal, this disgusting slap on the wrist that a lot of these institutions just managed to weasel out of. Our government handed them on a silver platter. Matt, first of all, thank you very much for guest hosting the program. A few weeks back, you did a great job. It was very well received, and if you're so inclined, we'll get you back on to do that again. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, you led off there talking about these foreclosure settlements. In this world of conspiracy theorists and theories, both real and perceived, it's important to separate fact from fiction. Well, here with these fraud closure settlements, we have very real examples of conspiracies between the government and the banks and institutions that have gutted the wealth of the American people. And you need to look no further than the press that is reporting on the details of these things. A few months ago, we had the 49 state attorney general settlement, and that agreement was between the big banks and was nothing more than sort of a slap on the wrist, if that. And then just last week, we had this reporting of the second round of settlements with the Fed and the Office of Comptroller and Currency and another set of banks. I will add one other thing. You'll be reading about tomorrow yet a third settlement between Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley for another pittance of a sum, $500 million. But what each of these three settlements represent, and again, you'll be hearing about the third one tomorrow, are the banks not even getting a good stern talking to, much less a slap on the wrist. What these settlements are really about are the banks and institutions pocketing billions of dollars of taxpayer money, both in the bailouts, but even before that, in the good times when they were originating these loans, the banks and institutions were pocketing billions of dollars. And when the loans went bad, either in foreclosure or as part of other claims, they make claims on you and I, the federal taxpayer, as part of the insurance that went along with those claims. And what none of the press is reporting on is what these settlements are really about, and particularly the 49 state attorney general settlement, were insurance claims that the institutions made and collected hundreds of billions of dollars in some cases. And, you and I as taxpayers get the short end of this stick all the way around.
No doubt about it. And I just dropped an article in while you were talking there that was on that deal that happened a few days ago. You're right. $5 billion was I believe was the amount in that 49 state settlement deal, which was basically tantamount to a rounding error of their profits. Complete and total setup from the word go. Meanwhile, we have complete blackout in the media, at least in the mainstream media, of not only how erroneous the deal was and how much collusion and corruption is involved to get this deal cut, but a media blackout on the sheer number of people who are still out in the cold. We're still pumping out 1 million foreclosures a year. We're still seeing the price of homes in this country continue to fall. We're still seeing middle class devastated, yet these too big to fail institutions, they're sitting high on the hog. They're healthier than ever. In fact, Goldman Sachs profits was just announced today, and they're having a banner year. They're doing absolutely fine, and the outrage isn't there, Matt. And that's one thing that really, in some ways, upsets me almost as much as the crime itself, is the complacency that we have.
And that really is the problem. We can read about it in the news. We can see the headlines in the paper, which really aren't telling even half of the story. But I'm glad you mentioned the Goldman Sachs example. You're right. It's painfully ironic that today Goldman Sachs reports their profit for 2012 at the very
Matt, we still got you? All right, we're having some audio issues with Matt. We'll try to get this cleared up, and if we can't, we'll get him on by cell phone. So yeah, we have the institutions that brought us to the brink of failure. Look,
of that agreement, and so all we get are the headlines asserting that there is a settlement without actually getting the actual terms of that settlement.
Yeah, and we lost you for a second there, Matt. So at least I lost you. My feed from you was cut off for a second. But we don't hear the terms of these deals, and we're treated to celebration, right? We're treated to celebration by the mainstream business media that these huge fines are being levied. These biggest fines in the history of the industry, billions of dollars. It is nothing. It's absolutely nothing when you consider that we went from $8 trillion in sovereign debt to 17 almost in sovereign debt, and it hasn't stopped there. $1 trillion deficits are going to continue into the foreseeable future. And guys, this is all allegedly to rescue the economy that was completely sabotaged and destroyed by these exact same institutions. Matt, are you still with us?
Yeah, I am. And Charlie, one of the things I want to talk about is that these numbers that they report, $25 billion for the 49 state AG, $10 billion for the OCC, are nothing but fantasy. Those are just the maximum amount that they would be required to quote unquote pay. Although, as we've covered in the past, it's not like Bank of America's cutting a check for the $5 billion or GMAC's cutting a check for $5 billion. What penalties, if any, are coming potentially out of the pocket of investors? But there's another thing that we just discovered yesterday that's terribly disturbing, and that is these settlements potentially will be used by the banks and institutions to write down their tax liability. And
Oh
so,
my God! So they're going to get it back. They're going to get this back over and over again. And to think that it even cost them is a joke. But now they'll continue to profit even from their penalty. Matt Weidner, hold on a minute. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with Matt Weidner. More Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, joined by attorney Matt Weidner. We've established a connection with him via cell phone, little stronger connection. He's on the road tonight. He's out in California, being an advocate, been doing what he does, fighting for folks who are just been steamrolled by this government, by this financial system. And we were talking about these settlements, Matt. We lost some of the audio in the last segment. You were talking about how these deals are announced peripherally, right? They throw a number out there, but they don't really talk about how these go down. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So if we go back to the 49 state attorney general settlement, this was allegedly the attorneys general from across the country working for the people, and all we heard was first in the press, all this reporting about $25 billion. We didn't get the details until some days or weeks later, and it was every bit as bad as we could have expected it to be. But now focusing on the headlines of the OCC and Federal Reserve settlement, keep in mind this is a second agreement by a different regulatory body with a different set of banks, some overlapping, but the bottom line is this. Last week and the week before, we heard the press about the $10 billion or whatever the figure is. But now as we go days on, we still don't even have the details of the settlement to find out exactly what it might be. But one thing that appears to be apparent from both of these settlements is that the banks and institutions may be able to credit this against their taxes. So the settlement really doesn't even come out of their taxes. In fact, it comes out of our pocket as taxpayers in terms of taxes that they're not paying to you and I. So, one thing that's apparent with all of this, and that is there are no more government officials that are looking out for us, the American people. You really are on your own these days because you can't trust local government, you can't trust state, you darn sure can't trust the federal government to look after your interests or the interests of your family. And again, we need to look no further than these foreclosure settlements and see how it is that the government is conspiring with the banks and institutions that caused all these problems, and no one's looking out for us, the American people.
100% correct. In fact, I did a video when that deal was announced, a commentary video, and I'm looking for the article on it right now because the title of the video was "Another Fed Gift to the Too Big to Fail." We actually had members of Congress that were freaking out because the Federal Reserve was asked by a congressional committee not to announce the deal until they had a chance to see how it was going to play out, how it was going to work, who was going to get this money, and how was it going to be distributed, what was going to happen to future people who were fraudulently foreclosed on, what was going to happen to people who are in the pipeline now, how are the people going to be made to benefit from this settlement. None of that was done. The Fed basically told Congress, go screw yourself, even at the request of Congress, saying, don't announce this deal. They did it anyway. They went out at 10 o'clock in the morning. They announced this deal right in the face of what is supposed to be our representative government. It goes to show you that we have a system, a financial system, that has no concern. They could care less about what we the people want and what's best for we the people. They're doing everything possible to benefit the financial institutions that happen to make up the stockholders of the Federal Reserve System. Matt?
Yeah, Trevor, you're absolutely right. What you're referring to is the fact that Representative Issa from California and Representative Cummings both sent letters to the Feds and OCC and said, hold on a second with the settlement. We don't want it inked until we get some details here. And in a slap in the face to our elected representatives, the Fed wouldn't even provide those details to our elected representatives. And it bears constantly repeating that we still don't even know what the terms of this deal are, because according to their own information, they haven't worked out the final details. But one thing that they did report, which is truly, truly disturbing, is they're leaving it up to the banks to decide who is going to get compensation, if any. So rather than the truly independent review, even if it were going to be independent, or rather than the government deciding, well, what Americans are entitled to compensation based on the fraud and the lies and the corruption of the banks, we're allowing the banks to decide on themselves. So this is really the wolf running roughshod over the hen house. And again, totally disturbing that there are no voices speaking out for the American people. It's the elected members of Congress who are falling over for the banks and institutions, and they're the ones that are writing the laws and cutting these deals behind our banks and not at all looking out for the interests of the American people.
Not at all. Yeah, you're right. I'm glad you said the name, because I was struggling to find that article, and Senator or Congressman Elijah Cummings. He, not just some newly elected freshman congressman. He's a ranking member of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Kind of funny that they're oversight or government reform. Look, what this represents, and frankly, the larger picture here, what it demonstrates, is fascism. And I'm talking about the concept of fascism, wherein the government interest and the corporate interest are so intertwined that it's no longer possible for them to be separated. And I can only imagine that anybody within government that would seek to impose any higher penalties is confronted with the awful reality that were they to do so, were they to really try and punish any of these criminals and these banking titans for their wrongdoing, they would simply point the finger back at the government, because in many ways these banks and servicers are doing the bidding of Fannie and Freddie and the government, the different government agencies and entities that are so interconnected. So that's really something that we all need to comprehend and really come to grips with. In fact, when we're talking about the banking industry or the food industry or the airlines or whatever else, it's so intertwined these days that it's so difficult for even well-meaning congressmen or federal officials or government in any way to offer any kind of regulation or penalty against them. That's the truly disturbing thing.
Well, and it's, I talked a little bit in the first hour. It was not that many years ago when Lee Iacocca came before government and asked for $1 billion to bail out to save Chrysler. That was shocking. That was unheard of. That was, it was a monster deal that in a free market capitalist system that we were entertaining. The government was entertaining. It smacked of communism then. It smacked of fascism then. And but that deal was done. That happens now on a daily basis with the Federal Reserve, with its connections with financial special interests on Wall Street. Just by the fact that they lend them money at nothing is tantamount to a daily bailout. Just the fact that the Fed's going out buying $80 billion a month worth of debt is tantamount to a daily bailout that saves these firms, and to give them carte blanche, as it were, in settling these fraudulent foreclosures. It spells a picture of where we're at, and I think you're 100% right when you say it is fascism, because, what else could you possibly describe it as?
Well, that's truly the problem. And again, when we look at all of this and we recognize that, we got the short end of the stick when the banks and institutions engaged in business practices that were fundamentally unstable. Then when they were bailed out, again, we got the short end of that stick because they're using our taxpayer dollars to fail out failed institutions one more time. And then now we have the third, at least, round of it, where once again, whatever penalty they might pay, and I can only stress this again and again, that the truly disturbing part about this is, well, on the one hand, the banks and institutions may be using these settlements to offset their tax liability. One thing that is disturbing is that if those Americans benefit at all from these agreements, and in some of these agreements they're receiving some principal reductions or other quote-unquote debt relief, they will also be getting a 1099-C tax liability form. So, how truly disturbing that the American
unbelievable. You're gonna watch your investment go through the floor. You're gonna get some kind of a write down on a mortgage that bank, more than likely it either got a direct bailout or saw 100% coverage on that mortgage during this bailout phenomenon, and then the settlement that is pittance to them to begin with, they can use as a tax write-off. But the homeowner who's went through 2 years of hell and probably all kinds of stress and all kinds of issues that every one of these people are having to deal with, is going to get 1099 so they can pay more money to the federal government so it can be shuffled into the coffers of these big institutions. It's outrageous, completely outrageous, Matt. And we're running up against a break now. When we come back on the backside, I do want to get your take on, you are out there battling for these people who have been foreclosed on fraudulently. Is there any good news that you can report? And then I want you to touch on what you think of the proceedings with this obvious attempt to destroy the Second Amendment of the Constitution. We're going to be back with attorney Matt Weidner, more Wide Awake News Radio, just a few minutes, guys. All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment with attorney Matt Weidner. Couple things real quick. You talked about at the break, you want to talk about Aaron Swartz. I definitely would like you to talk about that. We touched on that topic last night. Free exchange of information and ideas is a very, very dangerous thing to the powers that be, the power elite. And we see a constant barrage of potential legislation, SOPA, PIPA. Potentially, we have to worry about some kind of a terrorist event happening on the internet. They're trying to scare the hell out of the people of this country. So we will give the power and control of this last medium of free speech you give this power to this government that has proven itself to be a destroyer of freedom, not a purveyor of freedom. Matt?
Yeah, I really want people to Google that name, AARONSWARTZ. This is a guy with a young, brilliant freedom lover, a guy that worked tirelessly for the free flow of information and for the pursuit of democracy. He fought against corruption, and he was a target of federal prosecution, and that's something that we all need to recognize, the liability that you and I face for speaking out, and frankly, the liability that all Americans face for daring to exercise the freedoms that we heard about in grade school, but which frankly are a delusion now. If you don't think that by logging on to this radio program or logging on to the different websites that you're hitting that are talking about these kind of issues makes you a target, then you're just frankly not being very realistic about what's happening in this world. But, there's so much going on right now where you wanted to touch a little bit on the Second Amendment and the federal government, Obama, and these moves to restrict access to weapons and to chip away at our cherished Second Amendment freedom. I think it's terribly, terribly problematic that in these divisive times, in these times when we have terrible economic circumstances around the country and we have a very difficult geopolitical environment, that this administration is picking an issue that is among the most divisive in their entire country. And, similar to the healthcare debate in the past, but more importantly, just to focus on something which, these rights that are held so near and dear to so many Americans, and to really give it the full court press when there are so many other pressing areas is very, very scary to me. I just want to talk about a very practical problem here, and that is set aside the passion that you and I and many of the listeners have for the Second Amendment and our right to protect our family with weapons that we choose. Set that aside for a minute, and let's just talk for a moment about the practical limitations to that. Even if we all decided that we wanted to give up our guns, you just simply could not do this in any meaningful way. And so what this sets up is a physical and practical impossibility. And when you think about it that way, so again, think about this. Gun control legislation and any limitations on the possession of weapons that good law-abiding citizens would have is something that's just frankly not practically possible. And so what's the purpose of going forward with a very divisive issue in these very dangerous times? I can only expect that part of this is just to create a more divisive political environment, to shore up more of the power that this government that's in place already has.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I've given thought to that exact argument. What are you going to do? What is going to come out of this? I mean, there as far as the physical confiscation of guns, that's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen unless we had a Reichstag moment and we had this NDAA 2013, 2012, all implemented, and we are in complete martial law, and people are kicking in doors. If that happens, then all bets are off anyway. We're in a chaotic society. So what is the purpose? So, what is the reasoning behind this? The verbiage they're talking about as far as gun control is 7-round magazines, 10-round magazines, no assault weapons. Grandfathering in, perhaps not grandfathering in. What I think where the agenda could be realized is looking at these executive orders that were signed, these executive orders that are trying to paint this government/private sector cohesion at going after another war. We had a war on drugs, war on terror, war on poverty, war on this. Now we're having a war on, as Drudge put on his headline this morning, war on crazy. This partnership between government and, in this case, the medical industry. Right? We already have Obamacare that's going into effect now, but this notion that everybody in this everybody who's from cradle to grave at some point or other, in multiple times, in a lot of cases, you're in to see your doctor, and to use the medical profession to be enforcers or spies or whatever kind of a reporting agency that is beneficial to keeping tabs on the people smacks of. It doesn't smack of. It is a Stasi-style police state. And I said this early in the when we were having trouble connecting with you, that it'll turn out to be that the number one occupation, the fastest sector of the economy that's growing, is the security state. We're spying on each other. You see something, say something. Now you're going to go to your doctor, or maybe not go to your doctor. You're certainly you're going to be tentative if you're going to go in there and talk about any issues that might have to do with depression or anxiety, anything like that, because you don't know what's going to happen when you walk out that door. We have no-fly list. We have a concerned no-fly list. We have fusion centers that have sprung up all across this country. We have branches of government that have no business buying thousands and millions and billions of rounds of human shredder ammunition. The picture is being painted pretty clear to see that we're heading towards this totalitarian police state, Matt.
That's exactly right. And I think when we talk about the gun control debate right now and you ask what is the real intent here, well, I think in the short term what's happening is we're testing the limits. The administration is testing the limits of their power. Just how far will they be able to push? I think I agree with you, at least in the short run. Nobody's going to come and try and take the guns out of my cold, dead hands or any other thing at this point in time. But what's occurring is you're seeing these trial balloons and these
That's right.
proposals about what the administration could do. And they're gauging the reaction, and they're testing out people like you and I and our citizens and just trying to see just how far they can push it. And so I agree with you that while that may not happen in the short term, the proposals that they're floating and the communication that's occurring is just setting the stage for something far more far-reaching in the near future. And I think you're right. I think it's going to take one or two incidents before the representation is made that we need to do these more dramatic and draconian things for other purposes that have not yet been disclosed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And let's not forget, this is the nation that was once a constitutional republic that was governed of, by, and for the people. That is gone. Now we govern of, by, and for the next crisis event. This whole gun control Second Amendment debate, dividing issue in this country, is being brought to us on a crisis event. The bailouts that has led Matt Weidner to being a advocate for fraudulently foreclosed on individuals was brought to us by a crisis event. So, they're coming out now, setting the stage for what's coming in the future, a crisis event that comes that allows them to go across that next line. And unfortunately, we've been so desensitized on governed by crisis, this will probably happen.
It's truly disturbing. So as I always like to sort of get near the end of these phone calls and figure out what it is we need to do, and
right.
I think that it's important to talk about the positive things. And
yeah, no doubt. And we have about 3 minutes left, so yeah, hit us on the positives, especially on the foreclosure issue. Are we making any headway? Are you finding fellow lawyers to get out there and do this work? And go ahead.
They really are. There are freedom-minded lawyers out there all across this country that are community-minded. They're standing up to defend the individual rights, the constitutional rights of their neighbors. We've got judges out there that do listen to these things and are being responsive to the arguments that we're making. And so I just encourage everyone to reach out in and among their community to like-minded individuals, form those close-knit communities, know who your friends and allies are. It's terribly important as well to take personal responsibility for your own self and your own family. And of course, that means that when these crisis events come, you don't want to be one of the wild men or women out there running in the streets. You want to just be able to burrow down in your own house, hold your family tight, and be secure. And unfortunately, we all recognize that the bad things ultimately are going to come. We just hope that when they do come, you and I and our families are tucked in safe and secure, and that there'll be better things waiting for us on the other side of the crisis.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We certainly, I certainly agree that this event, this time of to test the preparedness of people, especially mentally, is rapidly approaching us. Again, it's one crisis after another, and a lot of them come out of left field. And every time one of these crisis event occurs, the only thing that we can be rest assured of is that more of our freedom is about to head out the window. And I certainly see that with this coming down with the Second Amendment deal, putting those kids behind them on that stage, selling the features of protecting the children. This is all about the children. Bull crap. It has nothing to do with the children. We could spend a tenth of the money that we're about to spend on this Second Amendment destruction by putting armed policemen in these schools to protect these kids. But that isn't even on the table. We're going to go ahead and attack the people from the medical profession and get them involved to enforce, to snitch on their fellow American. Matt Weidner, I greatly appreciate you coming on. Sorry for the technical difficulties we had tonight. What's happening with you? You're maybe getting into more, thinking about getting into some maybe more radio programs. The last time I talked to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that First Amendment is so important, and sharing that message to Americans to look out for one another and protect themselves. It's just an obligation, I think, as a concerned member of society to get out there and speak more often. So I thank you for the opportunity tonight, and I look forward to talking to you again, Charlie. Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. And let's, why don't you give your website out, mattweidnerlaw.com, correct?
That's it. Thank you so much, Charlie. Have a good night.
You too. All right. All right. Visit his website, mattweidnerlaw.com, and you can see the work he's doing. He also puts up a lot of YouTube videos. He makes a lot of YouTube videos on these topics, and he posts them all there as well. I want to thank Greg Manarino for coming on. Always a good program when he is on. And, of course, Matt Weidner for coming on and joining us tonight as well. Tomorrow night we're going to have, I believe, John Rubino is our guest tomorrow night in the second hour. Eric Lovely and myself in the first hour. Please enjoy Jeff Rins because he's coming up next. Everybody have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.